Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. John Kelly Profiler. And today we have a stock member on, which is fantastic. We have Chief Psychologist Dr. Edward Merski. Dr. Merski is a pure psychologist. He's a doctor of psychology. He's not a PhD. He's a complete doctor of psychology. Okay. And it's called a PsyD. He's a PsyD, not just a PhD. He is a walking encyclopedia of psychology information. I'll tell you that right now. He's unbelievable, and I've been privileged to learn from him for 30 years, and it's been my honor. And I'm also privileged and honored to have him step in today on the show and give his 2 cents. Because today, what we're going to be talking about on this show is admissions in prison, psycho or psychotic admissions in prison. Okay. Richard Allen, what were all these guilty admissions about? Why did you admit to killing Abby and Libby? All right. And with that being said, I want to bring out that Richard Allen is absolutely innocent, presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, and he's on trial right now. But it's out there. It's all over the place. It's been for a while. He's admitting, okay, that he killed Abby and Libby when he was in prison over 60 times. That's what they're saying, okay? That's the feedback we've gotten, and we understand that's coming up to trial, and we're going to have a lot of witnesses, okay, that are going to focus on that, and are going to sign off on that, all right? Now, the question is, did his protective custody cause this? All right. I don't see this guy being jailed and imprisoned in solitary confinement in like some cold, dark cell somewhere that's going to cause extreme depression and psychosis. But I want to ask the psychologist. I want to ask the main psychologist about all this. Okay. Because I am not a doctor of psychology, but I do have common sense, and I'm saying to myself, did this cause this depression? I believe he was depressed. There's no question in my mind. Or did guilt cause this depression? After all, he admitted that he killed the girls, right? Guilt could cause that. Guilt would cause that, correct? He talked about wanting to have a life in heaven with his family, because he can't have a life in heaven here with his family because he's going to be incarcerated. But the theory out there that is floating around court is, he was so tortured, and put in solitary confinement, or the imprisonment he was in caused him to go completely psychotic and admit to all these murders and how they were murdered, in different ways they were murdered, but he really didn't do it. Well, I'm going to tell you, I've worked a lot with lawyers. I've worked a lot with defendants. I've worked a lot with the courts over 30 years. And this is the first time ever hearing that. At this time, I want to introduce our doctor, chief psychologist, Dr. Eddie Merski. Eddie, before you come on, I want to send yours, mine, all the stock teams, and all of the people with us our deepest condolences over to the family and friends of Libby German and Abby Williams, who were murdered by Bridge Guy. Is Richard Allen Bridge Guy? We're going to find out. Jury's going to be coming back and talking about it again next week. In the end, we'll find out if they think he's Bridge Guy or not. Eddie, first question to you. What do you think? First, I want to thank you for being on. That's number one, giving up some time to your day-to-day for being on. But the first question I have for you, what do you think about this? And we've talked about it a little bit before. What about this kind of psychosis that they're claiming that Richard Allen has had? I do believe he had a psychosis. I mean, they did hit him with Haldol, but that doesn't mean that psychosis is just because he's been incarcerated. You've worked in prisons. years ago. You've worked in prisons. You understand this stuff. Would you talk about that?
Sure. Well, I mean, psychosis is a severe psychiatric disorder, number one. So one of the main questions is, does this individual have a history of psychosis? That's one of the first questions I would ask. It certainly would be unusual at his age to just overnight or within a couple of days develop a psychotic condition. It's possible, but usually the first thing they try to do is rule out, drugs, alcohol, some kind of, influence from some kind of compound. But let's rule that out. He probably didn't have access to that. So did he become, psychotic within a few days of coming into the prison? It's possible. I'm just not going to buy into that right now. Did he become depressed? I would think so. Yeah. The depression, it's another, major psychiatric disorder if you have a severe depression. But considering what he was charged with and the nature of the offenses, and that's now like public information. Everybody in the prison knows why he's there. The whole public knows, that they have charged somebody with these horrendous crimes. So yeah, I guess you would be depressed, considering what you're facing. But being, psychotic, that to me means you're having a complete break with reality. You're having hallucinations and delusions, and you are, totally out of touch. You can't. Even we had talked about it in the past. You can't even help represent yourself. You can't help defend yourself. Your attorneys his attorneys would want to get a professional, because unless they have a psychologist, a licensed psychologist, psychiatrist working in the prison, there's really no one else that can make those diagnoses.
Yeah, they do have a psychologist in the prison. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, and if that person, made that assessment that he is now psychotic, we'll have to say, well, maybe he showed some signs and symptoms of being psychotic. But I'm thinking back many, many cases. We don't have to mention all of them, but some people are certainly clever enough to fake psychiatric disorders. So they might have some knowledge about what signs and symptoms characterize that disorder, and they could, try to show them, display them. And sometimes, if you're a pretty good actor, you can get away with it. So, but it is, it's been mentioned that he's at least 60 times he's kind of confessed, or he's asserted that he is the murderer, the killed, the perpetrator. So that in itself does not mean he's crazy or psychotic or out of touch with reality. That this is where maybe if you have somewhat of a guilty conscience, you feel somewhat remorseful, then you just, come out with it. Maybe it's sort of some form of relief for him to say that.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, because he does talk about wanting a life in heaven, with his family, and it's important for him, to admit his guilt so that later on, in the hereafter, in heaven, he'll be able to enjoy his family.
Mhm.
That's the
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
allegations that are out there, and I think we'll hear more about that next week. But you're absolutely right. Continue. As far as I'm concerned, I think you're right. I think guilt plays a big part in this. Go ahead.
Yeah, he may have some level of guilt, and that's so we have no test. There's no lab test, for guilt. There's no, blood test we can give. It's strictly like self-report, self-admission. If he says he is guilty and he's remorseful, and it's not uncommon that many people in prison start to find religion of some type. They're thinking, well, my life in this earth is could be pretty much over. So let's start thinking about the afterlife, and you might want to make some preparations, and beg God for forgiveness, and be starting to prepare for the next life. That's always the greatest mystery of, I guess, life is what does happen in the afterlife. And, you'd even wonder, would his family want to be with him in the afterlife? He might be saying, I want my wife and kids or friends and relatives to, come and forgive me too. And we're all going to be all together again, pretty happy. You wonder if some people can forgive and some people have find it very hard or impossible. So we don't know where that stands yet. I don't know what maybe John, if his wife or other family are they in court all the time? Are they supporting him? Are they publicly saying that he's innocent, or are they not maybe just staying quiet, not saying anything? I don't know if you have any information on that.
Eddie, when you're talking about how supportive is his family and everything, I have to say, I think they're very supportive. Okay, but there's a couple things bothering me. I think that his wife is very supportive, and she's there every day with his mother. So they are very supportive. Now, what I'm hearing, but I am not totally sure of it, these are just allegations, is that his daughter is not attending. Now, I really don't want to get into that at this time, okay? But I understand his daughter is not attending, and we'll discuss that at a later time with the rest of the team, okay? So anyway, maybe she is, maybe she isn't. I'm only telling you what the allegations are, that the wife and the mother are there, but the daughter is not there. So whatever the reason is, right? She could be sick, who knows? But anyway, the other part of it is that, there is not a lot of support for him. There's some support for him, okay, but there's not a lot of support for him because of the different evidence that's come out. But go ahead, Eddie. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, that was always interesting to know who supports you and who doesn't. Certainly the two or three people, whoever, many lawyers, they have to support him. They have to, of course, say he's. I guess if he pleaded not guilty, then they've got to. Their defense has to try to convince the jury that.
Now, one thing
not guilty.
One thing I will tell you, you're right. They have to. That's their job, the defense, to convince the jury. The one thing I will tell you is that supposedly, and I believe this is factual, that he confessed, because it's been publicized in the news. He confessed to his wife on the phone. over the phone in the prison. Well, when that happened,
Mhm.
of course, it's recorded. All right. It's recorded.
Sure. Yep.
Now, she told them, supposedly, again, allegations through the news, stop talking, and hung up on him. Okay. Stop talking
Mhm.
and hung up on him. All right. So
Okay. Yeah, I
just so
can
you
understand that. Yeah.
understand, so far you're hitting all the bullseyes, but this is just how this thing is moving along. Go ahead, Eddie.
Um, getting back to, was he, I guess the question you're kind of asking is, did he make the 60 admissions of guilt because he was psychotic and depressed, or um, did he, did the guilty conscience kick in? They're different concepts, I guess, but I would imagine that, as is true with any medical disorder, if you're in prison, it must be treated. Meaning that if he was being seen by a psychologist in prison, and this psychologist believed he's truly psychotic, then you'd have to, I would believe, call in a medical doctor to prescribe antipsychotic medications.
They did.
You
Right.
know, they did. Okay, and I think you mentioned that they put him on Haldol,
Correct. Yeah,
that he
correct.
was given a Haldol. Okay, well that is an antipsychotic medication. Um, it's not one that's more typically used nowadays. It's kind of one from more likely to be used years ago. It is
It's
still
old.
used
An old one.
for, it's more for acute agitation. If a person is highly agitated, it's oftentimes used as a major tranquilizer.
Right.
Haldol, just to calm somebody down, especially if they're come to the emergency room, they're very agitated. They give them a shot of Haldol, usually to a fairly quick acting drug. So, but then it's possible you can make an argument, I guess, if he was being treated with the right medication and therapy, psychotherapy, and medication, that he could get better, and that could explain, in a way, why he is now pleaded not guilty. I mean, if you plead guilty, or you have 60 admissions, even to his wife, and then at some point you say, I changed my mind, I take it all back, I'm not guilty, then that's got to be explained too. When does this change occur, and then for what reasons?
Yeah, absolutely. What are the reasons? And again, I totally agree with the depression. I do agree
Mm-hmm.
with the psychosis. Okay.
Okay.
However, what I do not agree with is just the confinement causing the psychosis. I don't agree with that. I have never, ever in all my years seen a case like this in prison where somebody who turns around and admits 60 times that they killed two little girls, all right, did it because they were extremely depressed about their confinement. Because as you and I both know, there's different types of confinement in prisons, right? And there's
Yes.
difference between confining somebody to make sure they're not a danger to themselves or others versus confinement to somebody that's acted out and did something wrong in prison and has been put in a hole, given 30 days of solitary confinement in the hole. There's differences, okay? And if they think somebody is suicidal, a danger to themselves, they're going to put them in a protective environment, a protective confined environment, so they can't hurt themselves, and they can be watched by camera and by other people coming through, versus being any kind of general population where somebody could kill them. Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's always people in prison. You know, anything can happen in prison. And there's always people looking for street credit or whatever. And, you know, he's a high value target to some of these people in prison. Some of these people in prison. I mean, you know, I'm the guy. My claim to fame is I killed Richard Allen, the killer of Libby, German, and Abby Williams. You know, that's very possible, right? So, I mean, when we look at it, can we see the guilt as well as anything else that could be underneath the depression? Because I just don't want to talk about confinement causing this psychosis. I haven't seen it. You've worked in prisons. You've worked in prisons. Eddie, tell me, how many times have you seen psychotic people admit their guilt over 60 times?
I have to say never.
Never.
I would have to
Never.
say,
Other people I've
I
asked too
would
said
say,
never. Right. Never.
yeah.
Never. I mean, they can have different other symptoms of the psychosis, but not that. Go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted you. Say that. Right.
No, just like I was just thinking back. There's definitely people who come into the prison and they're psychotic. There's no doubt. You know, they have all they call them the 7 major Schneiderian symptoms of psychosis, and and you have to qualify. I mean, it's a serious, very serious medical/psychiatric condition, and by law, I guess it has to be treated too. You don't, just put somebody in a population and say, well, you're severely psychotic, and and just hopefully not, maybe some really bad prison in certain countries or something, third world country. I don't know. They may just throw them in the regular population and do nothing. But I think in most prisons in this country, there's got to be some treatment. And we know the best treatment for active psychosis is medication. You know, you have to get them like what we call medically stabilized. And the best way to do that, of course, is through antipsychotic medication.
Major tranquilizers. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the tranquilizers are more for, if they're severely agitated too. But one issue that I don't know if it's been adequately explored is that what is, Mr. Allen's, let's say, pre-crime history, psychiatric history. You don't, it's just so rare to, I don't know, what, his age now? How old is he right now?
I think he's approximately 51. And I have seen different things where he suffered since he was younger with depression. And I've heard allegations, and again, just allegations. Mr. Allen is innocent until proven guilty. Just allegations that after the girls were killed, okay, for whatever reason, Mr. Allen went away to treatment somewhere. That's a scuttlebutt. How true it is, I don't know. But it seems there has been, some type of history of depression. I would say of pretty much some kind of history of definite depression. Of course, you can never really confirm that because that's such privileged information. So again, it's scuttlebutt.
Yeah. Well, the court system, both sides, the prosecution and the defense, would want to know all those things. They should know it.
Can they bring that out, Eddie? Can they bring that out? Can they ask that question if he doesn't go on the stand? If he doesn't go on the stand, can they ask that question? Oh,
I would think so. Absolutely. Yep. I'm not sure right now who would help more. Who, I guess, if the defense is saying that he confessed because he was psychotic, or, but then I would want to know, again, what was his prior history? Where was he treated? Who treated him? Was he ever treated? I mean, throwing around words, depression and psychosis, and these are, major disorders. And, lay people have their own definitions of what that may mean, but, you usually have to, have the experts that make that determination. If he truly was he ever a psychotic? He might have been depressed, but most of the population has, some level of depression.
I know.
In our line of work, we call it the common cold of mental illness. Depression. So
that's a good way to phrase it. That's a good definition.
Yeah, who doesn't have a cold here and there? Same thing. Now, psychosis is far, far less common. An actual diagnosis of is such a thing as acute psychotic episode. You can have an acute psychotic episode and never have another one again. That is possible. Whereas like schizophrenia is generally a very chronic disorder, which can be very pretty well controlled with the proper medications, but it's usually a chronic disorder that never goes away. It's there for a lifetime. So it would be very good to know for both sides what was his previous history psychiatrically, and before the crimes. And he was 47. I say, just generally speaking, at age 46,
51,
47.
he would have been about 43, 44.
43, 44. Okay. Well, even then, to have your very first psychotic episode is very rare. Very rare. It certainly can happen. And so you got to rule out if it was induced by any kind of substances. Like if you use excessively cocaine or methamphetamines and things, you can be psychotic. But that's clearly, we try hard to separate, the substance-induced psychotic episodes from the non-substance-induced episodes. Very important clinically to know that, of course. So.
See, what concerns me, Eddie, is the privileges, and from state to state they can change, but what's privileged information and what's not. And usually anything that goes on with psych is pretty privileged. Well, anything medically is guarded by HIPAA, protected by HIPAA, but especially it seems, anything that has to do with mental illness. All right. So it'll be interesting to see. I agree with you. I think a history should come out. If he's claiming, psychosis or the devil made me do it or whatever the hell we're talking about here. I mean, I think it needs to, I think the prosecution has every right to ask what's his history been like, his mental health history been like. Okay. That is an excellent, excellent point you just brought out, and something we're going to be waiting and watching and looking for. And again, just focusing on, we have depression. Yes, depression can become severe, can be major depression. I mean, you can have, it can spawn a psychosis. There's no question about it, depending on how depressed you really and truly are. However, guilt can do that too. Guilt can be at the root cause of a depression as well, correct?
Sure. Well, there's, I guess, mild levels of guilt, moderate levels of guilt, and severe levels of guilt. And if you're in a severe category, I guess you could, have some psychotic type symptoms. I guess that's possible. We usually try to, separate them. Because having guilt is not a psychiatric disorder of any kind. It's not, guilt is not ever listed in the DSM-5 as a disorder. The only way it's listed anywhere, I would believe, is if under the sociopaths, psychopaths, that they have a lack of guilt. Generally,
right.
That's one of their features, is a very low level or almost a lack of guilt. But guilt is a very personal kind of thing, and I guess if you have committed some serious crimes, I mean, the most serious crime is murder, I guess. I can't think of too many more serious crimes, and some level of guilt would be, in the normal range, I guess, and can be guilt. We know people can give confessions, blurt out confessions. A lot of seasoned detectives know that they keep, interviewing somebody if they have a really good sense that this person is actually guilty. They, some good detectives, they keep at it, and they usually get a confession.
Boy, it's so interesting.
Occasionally, they go on. Yep.
So interesting you said that. I mean, that's right on key, I think, because he was pressed pretty good. He was pressed pretty good by detectives. So I don't know if he ever admitted that to them, but he admitted something to the effect, again, allegations. Well, it's over with now. I'm not. This is when they landed on his house and they were searching his house. But what the hell that meant, I have no idea. And I think only time is going to tell when they're finished displaying the evidence that they found in his house. I mean, they've got all these different phones and devices, and some of the stuff we talked about in the profiling, some of the stuff I sent you over that you were specifically involved in 4 years ago. And we are not done yet. We are not done yet. Eddie, I got to stop here. So,
okay,
we'll pick this up again. You'll come back again, right? I mean, and
sure.
about this, because this stuff is popping up, and we need it from a true professional. We're honored to have you. We've been friends a long time, but I can't thank you enough for taking your time out of the day today. I know you have a busy day, for just being on here and explaining this to, our fans and to our audience. I mean, really, really, I don't think I've ever heard a better explanation than that. Okay. And I'm sure our fans and the audience will pick up on that. So at this time, I want to say goodbye to you, and I want to thank you for being on. I know our audience will be very thankful you were on. And I want to thank the audience. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in today. You've heard it from the horse's mouth. This is Chief Psychologist Dr. Edward Merski. Again, he's the pure of the pure. He's a side D. There's nobody I know better than him. Okay? He is truly remarkable, and I've had the opportunity to train under him and learn from him 30 some years ago. Okay, and it's an ongoing process, and I'm just honored to be part of Stock and to have a relationship with him and with Frank Adamson as well. I mean, the people are the best in their field. All righty. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. Please be careful. Please watch yourselves out there. We live in a dangerous world. Take care. God bless. And until we meet again, stay safe. Thank you, Dr. Reddy. I truly appreciate it.
Okay, you're very welcome. No, anytime.
Thank you. Take care, brother. Bye-bye.
Okay.